Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good evening and welcome to Huda Tonight. I'm Ali Soliman. I'll be your host for tonight's program. Thank you very much for being with us. Today we will continue providing news and information from across the Muslim Ummah that is of interest to us, and also have discussions of important topics. Continuing in this live episode from Cairo, Egypt. Today is the 8th day of Jamada al-Awwal, the year 1438, and the day on the Christian calendar is the 5th of February 2017. Thank you very much for being with us. Let's go ahead and look at our news items for tonight's news segment. There's been another attack against a Canadian mosque as the country was mourning the loss of Muslims in Quebec City. French police have critically injured an Egyptian national at an iconic museum. Iran and the United States have exchanged punitive sanctions against one another. A federal judge in the United States' Washington state has blocked the ban that President Trump has imposed against Muslims. Kosovo and Serbia are the European Union had been hosting peace talks. Those have faltered and both sides are blaming one another. We also look at the relatives of the 9/11 victims from 2001 and their response to President Trump's ban against Muslims. In Saudi Arabia, we go to Riyadh to look at the city and the country celebrate their first ever Saudi Women's Day. And off the east coast of the African continent, the island nation of Mauritius, scientists have confirmed the discovery of a lost continent. Tonight, we go back in history to the year 2000, where we had a massacre committed by Russian forces against the Muslims in Chechnya. Inshallah, we'll look at these items for tonight's news segment. And following news tonight, we're looking at a very interesting subject. It has to do with the relationships that we have with people around us. And what we're going to do is compare and contrast friendship and brotherhood. What are the similarities and differences between friendship and brotherhood? Inshallah, we look at all these things after a short break. We come back with our news segment. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Huda Tonight. I'm going to be hosting tonight's news and social segments. Your regular host for Monday nights, Brother Muhammad Abdul Rahim, he will be back with us to continue tomorrow, inshallah. Let's go ahead and start with our first news item. It takes us to Canada. The country was mourning the loss of 6 worshipers who were gunned down last week. And there were at least 1,000 people attending, including government officials in Canada. That, of course, includes the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who was attending the memorial. And we'll be looking at the things that he spoke about. But during the memorial, the same day, just about 250 kilometers away in a different city, in the city of Montreal, the brothers and sisters were gunned down in the masjid in the city of Quebec City. But this is not far away, about 255 kilometers. We have another attack. The only fortunate thing is that there were no fatalities in the Montreal masjid attack. It was principally a case of vandalism. The vandals, they threw eggs, they spray painted hateful messages, and also broke the windows. However, despite the lightness of the vandal attack, the authorities, one of the city councilors have described it in very strong terms. This is one of the city councilors, Mr. Craig Suave. He said on social media that the attack was an act of terrorism. He said, quote, that it was intent on inciting fear into the heart of a community, demonstrating hate and ill will, end quote. The city councilor also said, Mr. Suave, that, quote, this too is terrorism. It is an action intent on inciting fear into the hearts of the community, destroying demonstrating hate and ill will. It won't work. He said it won't work though. Uh, Meanwhile, as we said, the name of this attack in Montreal, the Khadija Masjid Islamic Center, is where this vandalism case took place in Montreal. But going back to the memorial for the 6 who were killed in Quebec City at the Islamic Center there last week, they were laid to rest, and the government and the Muslims working together organized an event. Again, it was well attended, hundreds of people, over 1,000, including Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, who said he addressed those who were mourning the loss of the brothers and sisters there, quote, that as a community and as a country, together, we will rise from this darkness stronger and more unified than ever before, end quote. So they're getting, what we see in this story are the non-Muslim government officials, the city councilor, as well as the national prime minister, speaking great words of solidarity, support, and sympathy for the suffering of the Muslims, and an interest to protect the Muslims, to grow a less hostile environment for Muslims to live and work in, and to boost, as we said, solidarity. And so we're glad to see this relationship, that the government is very sensitive and careful to the plight of the suffering of the Muslims. We hope that justice can be done in this case. In terms of the shooter who killed these 6 individuals, the police have made an arrest. They identified him as Alexander Bissonnette, and we hope that this is the correct individual. We'll be following the details as they become available. We turn next to this attack that took place in France, in Paris. This is one of the iconic museums in the country, the Louvre. This attack was carried out by an Egyptian national, 29-year-old Abdullah al-Mahmi. Abdullah al-Hamami. He is from the Delta region in Egypt, and he walked into this facility with 2 backpacks. He was in the country on a tourist visa, according to the details released by the police. He had flown into France from Dubai, and he had rented an apartment in one of the high-end districts, one of the higher-end districts. He was renting this flat, and he was allegedly underground in a bookstore where the incident took place, where he wielded a knife and injured one of the security persons before they intervened and shot him, critically injuring him. He, according to the police details again, he is currently in hospital, and his condition is no longer, however, initially it was life-threatening, but he has been upgraded. His injuries are no longer life-threatening. So the police say that he was carrying 2 backpacks. Aside from the knife that he used against one of the security guards, there was also a machete in a second bag that he had. He also had cans of spray paint in the bags, and they were filled with paint, but there were no explosives in the bags. Very curious thing. The police in Egypt, meanwhile, have spoken with the family members back home to question them about his circle of friends, any organizations that they believe he belongs to. And his father told the press, the international press, that he did not belong, that he was shocked to hear this, that he didn't have any membership or association with any terrorist organizations. The father said, quote, that I find it incomprehensible that a young man on his way to commit a terrorist act only has a knife with him, the father said. Also, he said that if you tell me that he had a gun, a rifle, then yes, I believe you. But he says that I don't, and all we want is the truth in this case. There wasn't any signs that the family was aware of, that they told the Egyptian police who came to meet with them, questioned them. So it's a very curious thing. We're all trying to figure out why he took a knife and a machete and spray paint, no explosives, and apparently working alone. What was he trying to accomplish? It's very curious. So we hope that they can get information from him. As we said, his status is improving. He is no longer in a life-threatening situation. We go to this highly controversial executive order issued by the U.S. President Donald Trump. There's some ongoing saga, a legal struggle in the country over the order and trying to limit its impact. And now it appears that the order has been nullified, at least temporarily. We have a number of court cases that have been filed against this executive order, but also a judge in Washington State, in Seattle, in the United States, have taken action against this executive order. Now, there are many aspects to this story, and sorry, we get the order here. After the judge in Seattle, Washington, said that there was a federal judge who actually prevented this allowing it to remain in effect. In the wake of this, the White House issued a statement saying that as soon as possible, they would be submitting an appeal against any attempt to try and nullify the effect of the ban to allow Muslims entering from 7 Muslim-majority countries. However, that appeal has been reviewed, and the appeal itself has now been, according to reports that have circulated over the past 1 hour, has now been issued, and it is against the White House ruling, or at least against the executive order. We're going to be talking more about this, but also for our next item, we'd like to talk about this relationship between the United States and Iran. Prior to the end of the Obama administration, the world powers were able to reach an agreement where Iran agreed to greatly reduce their nuclear program for the lifting of sanctions. And now we see the United States government under the Trump administration issuing a new round of sanctions against individuals and organizations, companies in Iran. And the Iranian government has fired back with punitive sanctions against the United States. In particular, the United States has listed 13 individuals, Iranian individuals, and 12 Iranian companies. They have listed these individuals for what they say is evidence that they're supportive of the Iranian missile system, not the nuclear system, but the missile defense system in Iran. And this is the basis for the sanctions, the new sanctions imposed on Iran by the United States. The action was announced on Friday, and very swiftly the Iranian government responded by denouncing, condemning the new sanctions against their government. And the Iran Foreign Ministry issued a statement saying, quote, that the new sanctions are not compatible with America's commitments and Resolution 2231 in the United Nations Security Council that endorsed the nuclear deal reached between Iran and 6 powers. The Iranian Foreign Ministry statement also says that in retaliation for the U.S. sanctions, Iran will impose legal restrictions on some American individuals and entities that were involved in helping the founding of regional terrorist groups, end quote. Now, these regional terrorist groups, it has been widely held It has been a widely held view that the United States is responsible for the creation of Daesh. Now, the only difference along the spectrum of the United States' responsibility is either by neglect, allowing a certain organization to grow to prominence, to illegally export oil, to become wealthy and influential, so by neglect, or by direct means, supplying information, supplying equipment, that is dropped in, so on and so forth. Iran has a very strong, Iran comes down on the side of being directly involved in the creation of Daesh. And they are saying that because of this, the United States, those that they believe are responsible for the creation of Daesh and other organizations, that Iran will be imposing sanctions on those individuals. So we see an escalation of tensions between Iran and the United States. Brothers, do we have a telephone call? Okay. All right, brothers, we'd like to go to a telephone call. This is going back to the story about the ban that the United States Trump administration has imposed on Muslims and Christians, for that matter, in 7 Muslim majority countries. The guest is calling in from the United States. This is Jean Lewandowski. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Hada Tonight.
It's not Lewandowski anymore.
Can you hear us okay? Assalamu alaikum, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay. Sister, we're learning that within the past hour that the appeal that the White House made has been struck down. Can you confirm or deny this?
I don't know. I haven't heard.
All right. So in general, how would you characterize this legal battle that is going on between the White House and federal judges in various districts across the country?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you joining us, and salam alaikum to you. May Allah accept your efforts. We would like to continue and have a look, inshallah, at this deal that the European Union has been struggling to try and reach a peace agreement between escalating tensions between the 2 Balkan states of Serbia and Kosovo. Some very provocative things have been happening in recent months, and as a result of this, the European Union, the foreign minister, Federica Mogherini, has stepped in to host discussions between the leaders of both sides. But those efforts have fallen through. They have reached a stopping point with both sides, Serbia and Kosovo, blaming each other for the failure in the talks. The Serbian Prime Minister, Alexander Vučić, said that Kosovo, the leaders in Kosovo, the only goal is to storm into the northern part of the country. This is where we have a large population of Serbs inside Kosovo. This is also where that train was sent in from Serbia into Kosovo 2 weeks ago that was decorated with Serb national colors and had a slogan painted that said that Kosovo is Serbia. A very provocative action that was taken by Serbia, and Kosovo turned the train away to defend its national sovereignty. This was just one of a number of things that have been happening in recent weeks. In particular, the Serb Prime Minister, Mr. Vučić, he also says that Serbia is a sovereign country and they can give such orders to whom they can, but they cannot give such orders to Serbia. Meanwhile, the Kosovar President, Hisham Thaçi, he said that he's urging the European Union as well as NATO to prevent Serbia from escalating tensions because some of the language has become very deeply concerning to all parties involved, with Serbia saying, throwing around the word about war, alleging that Kosovo wants to go to war. The Kosovar president is saying that it's very important, very dangerous, to take steps and measures to prevent an escalation of tensions so soon after the wars that was visited upon the peoples, with thousands of people killed in the 1990s. We next go back to the United States, to this ban against the Muslim entry into the United States, and look at some of the remarks, the reaction by some of the family members that survived, have that lost loved ones and friends in the 9/11 attacks. Now, a part of the language that Trump used in drafting this ban against Muslims, he made reference to 9/11 attacks, and the whole aim of this was to ensure national security. One of the survivors of the 9/11 attacks, Mr. John Sigmund, he said, quote, that this is totally unacceptable. It goes against everything that we stand for as Americans. He's referring to this order, the executive order issued by Trump. He also said, Mr. Sigmund, quote, that September 11 family members said that Trump's action would sow distrust among Muslim Americans and hurt refugees from war-torn countries. He also said that I am actually sickened by President Trump's use of 9/11 in the executive order. He says, don't use our loved ones, and specifically my mother, to turn away refugees. The sentiment here that they're conveying is that they obviously don't agree with the U.S. president issuing this order, and this is just another aspect of this international condemnation and concern expressed by foreign governments in various sectors in the United States. We next turn to some light news, takes us to Saudi Arabia, to Riyadh. This is the first ever Saudi Women's Day that was observed, and the aim, of course, is to highlight, draw attention to the great and many contributions that Saudi women play to the Saudi society. This event was held at the King Fahd Cultural Center in Riyadh, and the supervisor for the center, Mr. Mohammed Al-Saif, he said that, quote, we want to celebrate the Saudi woman and her successful role and remind our people of her achievements in education, in culture, in medicine, literature, and other areas. This, as we said, was the first of its kind held at the King Fahd Cultural Center in Riyadh. Our last news item takes us off the coast of the east coast of the African continent. This is actually even east of Madagascar to Mauritius, this island nation of Mauritius, where international team of scientists have confirmed the discovery of a lost continent. As you know, we have 7 continents, but we also know that the current positioning of the 7 continents is not where they have always been. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the earth and all the universe in a very dynamic way. And we now know, we have great scientific evidence to demonstrate that the continents are actually moving and have been moving for hundreds of millions of years. And that at one point, if you go far back enough, all of the continents were connected as one grand landmass that was called Gondwana land. Again, this goes back about 200 million years ago. This is when the last time that the one landmass was one piece. After that, we saw a gradual drifting apart of the continents, and one of them was submerged. And there's been some suspicion for some years about there being other continents in the world. And the way that this was discovered was through minerals that are emitted from a volcanic lava. They dated the lava that is near the surface to 9 million years. However, layers that are deeper under this are dated much older, more than 3 billion years old. And how could it be except that the lava was produced, a volcano was erupting and covered, there was a layer that covered it about 9 million years ago. And so this has been accepted by the international community. The professor, who is the leading scientist, he told reporters, quote, that the piece of crust under Mauritius which was subsequently covered by young lava from volcanic eruptions on the island, seems to be a tiny piece of ancient continent which broke off from the island of Madagascar when Africa, India, Australia, and Antarctica split up and formed the Indian Ocean. Very, very interesting scientific discovery that was recently made off the east coast of the African continent. Before we break and go to our social segment tonight, we'd like to look at one item for this day in history. This takes us to the southern part of Russia. These autonomous states or provinces in Russia to Chechnya, where there was on this day in history, February 5th, the year 2000, a massacre committed by the Russian forces against the separatist, Muslim separatists. This occurred in the larger context of the Second Chechen War that is dated between August of '99 to May of 2000. It started in early August in '99 when an organization called the the Islamic International Peacekeeping Brigade, the IIPB, they invaded Dagestan to support separatist rebels in Chechnya. This organization, the IIPB, is mostly, it's an international mujahideen force, mostly comprised of Chechens, Arabs, and Turks. It was established in '98 and remained active until 2002. This invasion led the Russian forces, obviously, to respond to suppress the separatist movement. This is referred to the Battle of Grozny. This is the capital of Chechnya. And this particular battle, when the massacre occurred, is dated between the 25th of December to February the 6th of 2000, just a day before the massacre occurred. At the end of this battle, to reclaim the Chechen capital of Grozny, Russian forces allegedly carried out this massacre on the outskirts of the city in a suburb called Novye Aldi, and the incident is referred to as the Novye Aldi massacre of February 5th, 2000. According to a report by Human Rights Watch, the Russian special forces engaged in widespread killing of more than 80 civilians, including elderly women and young children, and also engaged in raping of women, looting, and arson attacks. Human Rights Watch and other international organizations also criticized the Russian government for failing to adequately investigate the massacre or protect civilians. At the time of the massacre, the Russian president was Boris Yeltsin, at least at the start of the war in August of '99. However, he resigned on the 31st of December of '99. This made Vladimir Putin the acting president, and it wasn't until long after the massacre and the battle for Grozny was over that Vladimir Putin became the official president of Russia in May of 2000. One very dark area in Muslim history, a massacre of Chechen Muslims, mostly Chechen Muslims, but also a few Arabs and Turks on this day in history. A short break, look at our expected weather for tomorrow. When we come back, inshallah, we're going to be looking at a very interesting subject. We're going to be comparing the differences and similarities between friendship and brotherhood. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Huda tonight. I hope you can forgive me, brothers. I got a little bit of a voice loss here, but as promised, we're going to be discussing the subject of brotherhood and friendship, looking at the similarities and the differences between the two. We'd like to introduce our guests this evening. Brother Mustafa Abdul Qayyum, thank you for being with us. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. It's always a pleasure of mine, Brother Ali.
Nice to have you with us. And for my first time, at least, brother who's joining us, Wael
Waba.
Waba.
You got it right.
Sorry about that. Please
No
tell us what you'd like to tell us. Introduce yourself. Anything you'd like us to know about you.
Sure. I work as a finance manager for oil and gas services company. I'm a CPA, and I have a degree in master's degree in business administration as well. I study part-time Islamic studies, and it's like the second time for me here in Huda tonight.
Great, great.
Thank
well,
you.
we're very happy to have you join
Thanks
us.
a lot.
Before we start, I mean, it's an interesting comparison, friendship and brotherhood. Let's start with just talk a little bit about what they mean. What does brotherhood and friendship mean?
In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most gracious, all praises are due to Allah, the Almighty, whom He asked to send His peace and blessings upon His final messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is His messenger and servant, and so on. When it comes to brotherhood and when it comes to friendship, brotherhood could be, we can say, like a friend is that person who shares interests, who has a similarity when it comes to any kind of action, or may actually judge or help you in taking judgments and so on, or support you. A brother is someone who there is a commonality, like he has a stronger tie between you and this person. There is actually a more fundamental approach when it comes to a brother. If I say that this person is a friend of mine, he may share an interest, but he doesn't have to be that much close, or cannot be really, more, I'm not going to say the word intimate, but he may become more close to me in the sight of God.
So one of the differences between friendship and brotherhood is that the nearness of the relationship.
Yes, because a friend, friendship is a part of brotherhood, but brotherhood cannot be a part of friendship. Brotherhood is a much more, wider span of definition. When it comes to brotherhood in Islam, you cannot say that this person is a friend in Islam. Because if you say he's a friend in Islam, you have really, downgraded the meaning of how close we really are, how unified we really are. Again, brotherhood means unity. A person is born in the same family. He is united with a person with one common feature, is that he comes from the same mother and father. But if I say to my own brother, like blood brother, if I say that he's a friend of mine, I'm not really giving him his rights. Because I need to explain further that this person is united with me. So brotherhood, in other words, it has a more stronger definition, or a much more strong link when it comes to unity. Friendship is a part of brotherhood, which may be, sharing similarities or common interests and so on. Now, in the Islamic sense, brotherhood has been mentioned time and time again in the Quran, and has been very deeply elaborated by the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. We see in the biography of the Prophet ﷺ time and time again, throughout the entire biography, the amount of importance when it comes to brotherhood. Why did the Muslims conquer all of the people around them? Not because they kept attacking or anything, no, because they united in brotherhood. They all had this, this love towards each other. They had this respect to each other. They would never sell out one another. And if anyone intervened trying to make any problems, the only thing that would actually guarantee for them to win any Muslims, they would first say that we have to divide them before we could attack them. Because if you fight them while they're united, they're very strong. You're unable to defeat them.
Yeah.
But if you fight someone, it doesn't have to be a battle of swords or guns. It can be a battle of culture. But if I go and attack a person, I have to divide them first.
And unfortunately, we're witnessing great division among the Muslim Ummah right now.
Exactly. In the Islamic nation today, what do we notice? We notice that a lot of Muslim countries, they're not supposed to be borders in the first place. We're supposed to be all united. We all have to share the same economical...
We inherited this from non-Muslims who were colonizing.
Yes.
And it's just relics of the past.
Of course, I totally understand.
Why not erase these and re-establish?
That's the whole thing, brother, is that in the Quran, even in the Quran, if I'm allowed to recite one verse of the Quran, and this, this verse is so beautiful, it really elaborates the brotherhood, and it elaborates that actually a blessing from Allah, and it is a responsibility to preserve it. Allah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها. Allah says, and hold on tightly to the rope of Allah, to the bound of Allah. What is the rope of Allah? People start saying to themselves, is there a physical sense of handling the rope of God? No. The only rope here Allah is talking about is that we unite together under the obedience of Allah. Allah is saying to all of us, do not be divided. Why? Because Allah knows if we as Muslims, those who are pious, those who are always God-fearing, we cannot defeat other nations through warfare, but only if we're united in the worship of Allah, in the oneness and unity under the lordship of Allah, we can defeat anyone. We are not trying to make enemies with anyone at all, but what I'm just trying to say is that we are much stronger because unity is our identity. The only nationality that we should be able to acknowledge as Muslims is the Islamic nation. This is the whole thing. Is the godly essence that we are created by one God, and that we're not to be racist at all. How many problems did we receive throughout history? When it came to racism against the Africans by the Triple K movements and so on. You can also notice in the times of the Prophet ﷺ, even Allah is saying that we have created you and divided you into different tribes so that you may identify one another. And the most righteous amongst you, or the most honorable amongst you, is the most pious. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. He did not say that the most honorable amongst you is from the Arabs or the non-Arabs. So here the only time we are allowed to be actually racist is when we start competing in the pleasure of Allah. That I may look at my brother and say, brother, you and I will compete now, not because of different skin colors or family, like family issues or anything, or wealth. No, we start competing in the wealth of Allah's pleasure. We start saying that I want to please Allah, and let's see who will do it more, but in a way that we do not associate partners with Allah.
Right.
So Alhamdulillah, may Allah accept our, and we'll go through step by step, inshallah. There's still a lot of hadith that we need to talk about, inshallah.
And in fact, Brother Wael, I think you would like to help us define brotherhood and friendship through a story.
Right.
Go ahead.
Actually, looking at Muslims today, Muslims are like over 1.6 billion with different point of views, opinions, and Muslims should focus more on their common things instead of focusing on tiny stuff, tribals, and they should they should not hold any grudges against each other.
Right.
Back at the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, one day he was sitting with the companions at the courthouse, and then two brothers walked in while dragging a young boy. So Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, he was like shocked, and he looked at them and, why are you dragging him? So they said, he killed our father, sorry. So Umar ibn al-Khattab right away asked the boy, did you actually kill their father? So the boy said, yes, I killed him, but it was by accident. So Umar ibn al-Khattab asked him, what happened? He said, I had a camel, and the camel used to tread on their property, and one day their father just hit the camel with a rock, and then the camel started bleeding, and the boy really got upset. So he threw a rock at the head of their father. Their father passed away right away. So Umar ibn Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, said, well, okay, so he asked the two brothers, are you guys willing to forgive him? They said, no, actually we are looking for retribution or qasas. He should deserve the punishment for killing our father. So Umar ibn Khattab asked the boy, do you want anything before we start implementing the punishment? So the boy said, yes, I have a younger brother, and my father left for us a money in some place. It's a secret place, and I need 3 days in order to go to the place and get the money and leave it for my younger brother. So Umar ibn al-Khattab, in the beginning, he thought that that the boy wanna get away with what he did, and he's making up the story. And then the boy, tried to convince Umar ibn al-Khattab. So Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, said, okay, it's fine. If you want to go get the money, somebody has to guarantee you. So the boy looked everywhere in the courthouse, and actually nobody wanted to guarantee him. And then all of a sudden, all the way from the back, somebody raises his hand and he says, I'm willing to guarantee him. He was Abu Dharr al-Ghifari. So he said, well, I will guarantee the boy for the 3 days. So the boy left, and the first day passed, the second day passed, and the boy did not show up. Now comes the third day. The third day, like Asr time, 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m., the boy did not show up. The two brothers goes to the house of Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, and they ask him that he should fulfill the punishment instead of the boy, since the boy did not show up, and he gave him guarantee. So imagine the scene. Abu Dharr al-Ghifari is walking with them through the Medina streets all the way to the courthouse, and everybody is like looking around. Everybody is, anxiety is piling up, and everybody is like, wondering why Abu Dharr al-Ghifari should be penalized for something which he didn't do. And then Abu Dharr al-Ghifari said, it's fine, but let's wait till the day is gone. Let's wait till the Maghrib prayer calls around sunset time, which, the day will be up by this time. So everybody is like waiting, and with very less hope that the boy will show up. Anyway, by the Maghrib prayer time, the boy all of a sudden showed up in the courthouse. Everybody was relieved. And then as soon as the boy walked in, Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, asked the boy, why made you come back? Why you didn't just escape? And I didn't send anybody after you, and you could have just, got away with what you did. So the boy said, I didn't want the people to say that a Muslim gave his word and he didn't keep it. I said that I will be back, so I wanted to honor my word. Okay, so Umar ibn Khattab was impressed with his answer, and then he looked to Abu Dharr al-Ghifari. What made you give him the guarantee? So Abu Dharr al-Ghifari looked at him and he said, I didn't want the people to say that a Muslim was looking for support or help or guarantee, and no other Muslim brother gave him such support on the spot. And then, like all of them, looked to the two brothers. And then the two brothers looked at the crowd and at Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, and they said, we forgive the boy. So Sayyidina Umar said, why? You forgiving him? So they said that we don't want the people to say that a Muslim was asking and seeking forgiveness, and he was not granted this forgiveness. So we can see from Abu Dharr al-Ghifari and the wisdom of Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, and the boy, he honored and he kept his word and his promise, as well as the forgiveness with the two brothers. How strong was the ties and the brotherhood between Muslims back then. Like Brother Mustafa said, that's why the Muslims were very strong, very powerful. They were able to, in such very short time, to spread the light of Islam all over the countries.
Wow, that's a great story, and you're a good storyteller. Yeah, thank you for that. It's a good illustration of the thing that we're talking about. The best example of brotherhood.
Yes.
One thing that I didn't clarify in our definition of brotherhood.
Sure.
This is about belief, right?
Right.
It's if you and I are born, or if two are born of the same mother, the same parents, that's one form of brotherhood. Do you make a distinction between biological brothers and brothers in Islam?
what do you think will be much stronger? Does it really make a difference? Because if a person, you will notice that you yourself would find friends outside. Again, we said friendship is a part of brotherhood. You will find certain people outside who are not from the same mother and father, who would actually support you and help you much better or much more, in an influential manner than any other family member. If you look at Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, he was not the brother of the Prophet ﷺ. He was not the biological brother, yet he is the closest companion to such an extent that he is the second best, Muslim man after the Prophet ﷺ. He, as the scholars have actually clarified, saying that, subhanallah, we look at the Quran, the Quranic text, for example, you will find that Allah is identifying Sayyidina Shu'aib alayhi salam. He's saying that as he entered upon his nation, his brothers, but when he brought over the shirk, the clarification of shirk, and then he brought the mentioning of the same nation again that he was sent unto, he did not call them brothers. He did not call them the brothers of Shu'aib. When the scholars clarified this, when they started interpreting this meaning, they say, why is it that Allah has taken away the term brothers of Shu'aib when it came to this kind of verse? Or, Prophet Huda alayhi salam, may Allah forgive me. Prophet Huda alayhi salam. Now they said that, yes, now we understand why. The first part, he did not mention the worshipping of God. He did not bring God's worship and rights being shared between Prophet Hud alayhi salam and the nation. But when the worshipping of Allah came into the end of the verse, now Allah identified them as not being their brothers, because brotherhood in the worship of Allah is much purer and much more exalted in station than to be ever compared with people who are associating partners with Allah, who or infidels, do not believe in Allah. So again, the Quran itself explains to you that brotherhood in the worship of Allah is the purest and cannot be compared to at all, and it is the essence of each and every success in the Islamic history. If you look at all of the empires around us, look at, for example, the Roman empires, how many assassinations took place because there was no trustworthy people around them. Their consultants were always either plotting some mischief or they were overthrowing the throne. And this is not something to be trusted. But in Islam, subhanallah, Islam did not have this capital of wealth at first. Yet the Prophet ﷺ was capable of rounding up the entire nation, not under his grasp, but under the grasp of Allah's mercy. So this is the essence of brotherhood. But to come to answer your question, now let's say, for example, I have Brother Wa'il. Brother Wa'il and I do not come from the same family.
Okay.
But again, maybe my family are not Muslims. Let's just say, for example, let's say my family are not Muslims. In this matter, Brother Wa'il, who is a Muslim, who will be much more closer to me in the sight of God? It doesn't matter what is in your sight. What matters is in the sight of God.
So this is an important thing to know in terms of defining and understanding this concept, that we have to look at, consider how Allah views not just one another. So for example, the first family, as we say, Adam and Hawa, Adam and Eve, their children, we say Cain and Abel, Habil and Qabil, were brothers, blood brothers, but they had a very different views, and beliefs. As an example of what you're saying, that the blood tie doesn't automatically mean that you're the same before Allah.
Of course, if you notice, Prophet, for example, if brother, let me just give one example of the prophetic stories. If you notice, Prophet Adam alayhi salam, Qabil was when it came to, very mischievous when it came to Allah, his connection between Allah. He would choose the cheapest of things or the lowest, quality of whatever stock that he had, and he would offer it in sacrifice for Allah, the Almighty. So this was his trait in the sight of God. But now Habil, I believe it's Abel in the biblical, Now Abel was the one who would choose the best stock of whatever quality that he would have, and he would present it to Allah. The distinction between them is that this man revered Allah, and he always loved him, and he always gave the best things for him. In the end, this is all from Allah in the first place. Now, this is the distinction between them, that one of them had to kill the other. And his brother said, I will not lay my hand unto you
Right.
to kill you back or to fight you back. So this is the distinction. Again, Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, Prophet Noah, his own son. What happened? We see again family issues all throughout the Quran. Again, Allah is teaching us it is not about blood ties. Yes, our parents have rights upon us. We love them, we care about them, we cherish them, and so on. But there are limits to that which does not contradict the Quranic teachings. Prophet Nuh alayhi salam had a son who disbelieved in Allah. He did not directly disbelieve in Allah. He just didn't want to believe his father. He didn't want to, board the ship with him, the ark, sorry. And he was immediately drowned. He was immediately punished. And when Prophet Nuh alayhi salam raised his hands to the sky and said, Oh Allah, this is my son, he said that we do not accept those who disbelieve. We do not support those who disbelieve. So here Allah is teaching the prophets again and again. And one final example, Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, his father. What did his father was a disbeliever. He associated partners with Allah. But when it came to Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, again, he acted in the Islamic way and said that I will seek forgiveness of Allah for you. And he said, his father said to him, you either leave or I will whip you, I will lash you, and we shall truly punish you. So, brothers and sisters, please understand that when it comes to brotherhood, sisterhood, and friendship, friendship is only a branch. It could either lead you to paradise or lead you to hell. But brotherhood, the only brotherhood that is accepted in the sight of God, again, it's not about what you see. Whatever Allah approves of, that is the brotherhood that in which the Prophet ﷺ has founded their religion upon. This is established their religion upon. So this is what we should always seek.
So go ahead,
Sorry.
brother. What?
I just wanted to quote from the Quran. How does the Quran define brotherhood? The Quran defines referring to Adam and Eve, defines brotherhood in a broader scope and in a specific scope. So if we go to chapter 49, verse number 13, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير صدق الله العظيم. O mankind, indeed we have created you from a male and female and made you people and tribes, that you may know each other. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is knowing and most acquainted. So, this is the first, the broader, I would say, definition of brotherhood, that all people comes from Adam and Eve. So, basically, all people are brothers and sisters and belongs basically to the same family.
That's a great definition.
Great definition. Yeah. And then in the Quran, within the same chapter, but like 3 verses before this verse.
Sorry, I want to add another comment.
Please, go ahead.
Besides just saying it's a great definition.
Yes.
How many vices and ills do we have in the world? Because people have a more restricted and narrow view of who is their brother and sister. Isn't that the basis for bigotry, racism?
Yes.
We are one group and they are another.
Right.
And we deserve a certain treatment and they get another. It's a big problem.
And actually it's right there in the verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. So we are closer to Allah not by our race, ethnic group, country, citizenship, color,
all these are man-made
job,
things.
social status. We are close to Allah by how pious and righteous we are. So it's right there. So this is, I would say, the broader scope. The more specific definition within the same chapter, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون. The believers are brothers, so make settlement between brothers and fear Allah that you may receive mercy. So, and this is the other definition of brotherhood, which is between Muslims. I just want to quote, like a couple of hadith from the Sunnah, which touch base more on the second definition, which is, the brotherhood within Muslims. In Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim, there is a very famous hadith where the Prophet ﷺ speaks about 7 type of Muslims at the Day of Judgment, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have them under His shade while there is no shade, and people are waiting for to be judged, waiting for a long time. It's with very tough conditions. Among within the 7 types is 2 men who love each other for the sake of Allah. They meet for that reason, and then they depart, or everyone goes on his way with the same love, which was for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another hadith, again in al-Bukhari and Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, "None of you will attain perfect faith until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself." So the hadith shows us here that we owe our Muslim brother support, sincere advice, always encouraging them to do or encouraging my Muslim brother to do the righteous thing, to do the good deed, and try to make sure that he refrain or stay away from bad deeds.
The same way that Abel was encouraging his brother Cain,
Right.
to do the right thing,
Right.
avoid the things that are harmful to us.
Yes, exactly. In another hadith in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ was teaching the companions. So he said, a Muslim has 6 rights over another Muslim. So the companions said, what are the 6 rights? So the Prophet ﷺ said, when you meet him, you greet him with salam. Salamu alaikum, which is the Muslim salutation. So this is the first right. When you meet him, you greet him with salam. When he invites you, you accept his invitation. The third right, when he seeks your advice, give him advice. Then when he sneezes and praises Allah, you invoke mercy of Allah on him. And then when he's sick, make sure that you visit him.
Yeah.
And finally, when he passes away, you follow his funeral. If you tie these 6 rights, it can portray a beautiful picture of how strong the brotherhood and the bond between Muslims, what the Prophet ﷺ taught us. Another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ goes even to the extent that we should make dua or supplication to our Muslim brothers at their absence. So the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Muslim says, a Muslim's supplication for his brother in secret is answered by Allah. At the head, an angel, the head of this Muslim who's doing supplication, at the head, an angel is appointed. And whenever he supplicates for his brother with something good, the angel appointed to him says, Ameen, and likewise for you. So we can learn from this hadith. The hadith teaches 3 main things. First of all, that it teaches today's topic, which is strong bond and strong relationship and brotherhood between Muslims, something which we lack nowadays big time.
Go ahead.
Okay, and the second thing, the hadith encourages us to supplicate for our Muslim brothers at their absence and be worried about their, I would say, everything, their daily life issues, their aspirations, their hopes and everything, and we make dua for them. When we make this dua, as the wording of the hadith says, it will be answered by Allah. Because not the servant, not the Muslim himself is doing the dua, his brother, his Muslim brother is doing it. And finally, the third lesson learned from this hadith, that the angel will say Ameen, and this Muslim or this supplication will be rewarded the same reward he's supplicating for his brother. So a lot of lessons learned within this hadith. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all that.
No problem.
And we started out asking a simple question: what is the difference between friendship and brotherhood?
Yes.
And what you're showing us both is that there's so much more to brotherhood.
Yes.
Friendship is very easy.
Right.
It's almost like any acquaintance, any
Right.
association that you have.
Right.
It's very loose. There aren't any. I mean, the rules don't apply that you're talking. All these
Right.
rules in terms of having someone's back, encouraging them to do good,
Rights.
praying for them, honoring and respecting their extending rights to them.
Right.
There's so much more to brotherhood than friendship.
Yes.
And not only that, friendship can sometimes be destructive. It can be damaging.
Right.
Friends can lead you to do things that will hurt you. And so this brings up another question, Brother Mustafa.
Yes.
In terms of managing the relationships around us, if we find ourselves with a friend or even a blood relative, brother or sister, whatever the case may be, who is having a negative effect on us, hurting us in some way, maybe even a parent. It can be really complicated, but unfortunately, this is the reality. Can you talk about that for us? What should we do in those situations?
Well, if a person, by all means, if a person always obeys Allah, he will always be surrounded by those who obey Allah. As instructed by the Prophet ﷺ, he would always say, ask of Allah the following prayer. Allahumma inni as'aluka hubbak wa hubbu ma yuhibbak wa hubba kullu amalin yuqarribuni ila hubbak. Oh Allah, I ask of your love and أسألك حبك وحب ما يحبك, and the love of those who love you and the love of every action that you love. So يقربني لحبك, and every action that gets me closer to your love. So subhanallah, in this supplication we understand that the Prophet ﷺ is saying to the Muslims, ask Allah to get you closer to those who love him, and ask even in every action that brings you closer to Allah. So we understand from spiritual sense, this is something in which is sought by Allah. We, as Muslims, we have to pray to Allah in order to bless us with companions, those who are God-fearing, those who will always surround us with that which pleases Allah. So this is the first step, that you always seek the aid of Allah, because this is a blessing and it's a responsibility.
Right.
Not everyone today is being blessed with this. And one of the reasons why that they're not being blessed with, the righteous companionship is that they always indulge in anything that angers Allah. How is it that you will be able to bring someone who prays 5 times a day in the masjid and recites the Quran and be a brother of someone who is 5 times a day, 5 times a day in a pub, drinking alcohol and beers, and this is a reality.
It will be pretty difficult.
It'll be very difficult. He may speak to him,
right.
of course.
Right.
He will speak to him of religion, no problems. They will most definitely speak about religion, and it depends on the intention of the person. But again, in the end, will this Muslim man who is God-fearing, will he be able to welcome this drunkard into his house where his wife, his family are living in this house? Never.
But what if it's his brother?
This is the point.
His blood brother.
Again, in Islam, even if he was his brother, will you be personally, now I'm not trying to bring you personally into this, but to bring a general example, okay?
Sure.
Now I have a brother of mine, he's a drunkard, and whenever he gets drunk, he's going to beat up everyone around him. Will this Islamically be the right choice to bring him to my house? No. Yes, as a brother, I care of him, and I have to ask and see how he's doing.
Right.
And I have to make sure that he meets his necessities. But there are limits. Why? Because my family has a right as well. As long as he does not contradict the rights of my family, then he's in the safe side. But again, if a person, even if his own father, again, Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ did not accept what his father would do, he would associate partners with Allah. We have multiple examples in the Quran teaching us how to react. When it comes to your father, look at Prophet Ibrahim. What did he say? "La sa'astaghfiru laka rabbi." I will ask of Allah forgiveness for you. And he would but leave silently. He did not say anything evil to him. He did not shout. He did not try to kill him. No, that's his father. But in the hadith, look at what this father is going to go through, Prophet Ibrahim a.s.'s father. In the hadith in Sahih Bukhari, in the day of judgment, Prophet Ibrahim's father will be brought forth in chains, and he will be very humiliated in the day of judgment. Prophet Ibrahim will look at Allah and he will say, "Oh Allah, please, you have promised me not to show me any disgrace, and especially when it comes to my family." So what will Allah respond? That we do not help those who have disbelieved in me. So this is a rejected, form of prayer. So what will happen? He will look down again at his father. His father would have turned into a foul beast, and he will be pulled with the chains into the hellfire. So this is a prophet's father. When it comes to a non-prophet's father, someone who's a normal Muslim like me, or normal Muslim like him, will be treated any better than any prophet. So again, brotherhood or family ties are restricted. Yes, we respect our parents.
Right.
We are dutiful to them, to that which pleases Allah. But when it comes to limitations set by Allah, there is no 360 degrees into this. We will obey Allah no matter what.
So these are some tough questions. I mean, we're talking about drawing lines that may affect family relationships, redefining who our friends and acquaintances are.
Just to correct, we are not the ones drawing the lines. Again, so the brothers will not think that this is a matter of opinion. Allah is the one who has shown us examples by prophets. How did they react? In the best of manners. Look at the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he would find any people about to fight each other, he would simply get up and leave. So when they asked him, "O Prophet of Allah, why is it that you left the gathering?" He said that the moment the jugular vein of one of our brothers has become apparent, Satan was present, and I did not wish to be in the same area where Satan is, where the devil is. So precautionary measures. We have to take precautionary measures, of course.
And I talk about parents. I don't have to tell you. Just pick up the newspaper and see the horrible things that parents are doing to their children of all ages. You know that in Muslim majority countries, some brothers somehow get the twisted idea that they should kill their daughters for having a boyfriend or getting married secretly.
Well, some so-called honor killings.
Honor killings,
I believe, mostly practiced in Iran, I believe, and even in Saudi Arabia.
It's all over, even here in Egypt.
Yeah, in Egypt, in Upper Egypt, mostly.
Yeah, it's in Pakistan, it's in Egypt, it's in all the Muslim countries, Arab and non-Arab. But the question is, the issue is, for someone who has a father like that.
That's the whole thing, Brother Ali. It's all about how you choose the wife and the father in the first place.
Right.
You have to choose someone who is God-fearing. Let's not expect, like for example, I'm not going to be married.
And it's an extreme. It's an extreme case, but it does happen, and it happens by the tens of thousands every year. It's a very sad aspect. But what we're talking about are making very tough decisions when we have to, for the sake of our deen, for the sake of brotherhood.
I believe the strongest verse in the Quran, which explains the strongest verse and the mightiest verse that explains brotherhood in the Quran, is that where Allah, I'm not going to be able to recite this very long verse, that Muhammadur Rasulullah وَالَّذِينَ مَعْهُ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءَ بَيْنَهُم. And Muhammad is the messenger of God, and those with him. Now look at this. And those with him. Is there any much more, like any higher or exalted station of brotherhood better than that, to be explained or identified in the Quran as with the Messenger of God ﷺ? There is no better than that. But again, they are not directly the brothers of the Prophet ﷺ. And look this is the thing that caught my attention, is that they are very severe, they're very straightforward with the disbelievers, and very merciful. They are merciful amongst whom? Themselves, when it comes to their brothers. They are very merciful. Does that mean that they're not really just with disbelievers? No, they're very just, but they're very straightforward. Whenever a disbeliever will deal with them, he will be very strict with them. Not strict in tyranny. Be strict as in that you are dealing with me. I have certain lines drawn by Allah. Yeah. I cannot go and enjoy with you that which you enjoy in this world. I cannot go and trade with you with that which Allah has forbidden. But sadly, today's community, especially in social media, especially when it comes to Facebook, YouTube, and all these kind of social media things today, what do? We keep getting to know each other, not knowing the dangers of exchanging cultural information. That a lot of people are not really Islamically educated. They might approve of what they do, and they start implementing Western ideas. And the Western ideas, they're really based upon friendship more than brotherhood, because they interpret brotherhood as a cult.
Anybody who's doing the same thing I'm doing is my friend. If we're robbing banks together, is my friend. If we're getting drunk, if we're praying together, whatever it is, you can have a friendship. Did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to. A friend is somebody who, like a simple definition. A friend is somebody who I enjoy time with, or I like to hang out with.
Smoke a cigarette with.
Yeah, or smoke.
Oh, right now there's the Africa Cup, the Cup of Nations. Is that
Yeah,
what it's
actually,
called?
it's playing right now.
Right now.
So
as we
far,
speak.
Egypt is ahead.
Hey, this is a great friendship.
He just sold his brothers. He just sold his brothers in Africa. That's a perfect example, by the way. See, you told him there are Muslims in Africa, bro, and you know he just sold them out and said, "My friends in Egypt."
Well, this was 20 minutes back, so I'm not sure. What.
Yeah. So,
But for brotherhood in Islam, it's a much deeper meaning.
right.
Like a friendship, usually, you know, we form friendship through, you know, sometimes online, so through sports practice, work, neighbors, family, and so on. But when it comes to brotherhood, you still enjoy spending time with them and having fun with them. But at the end of the day, like the hadith I referred to from the Prophet ﷺ, that you know that the bond between you and him is for the sake of Allah and pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this gives the friendship a stronger meaning, a stronger dimension. You're still a friend. You can enjoy time, go out, have fun, but at the end of the day, both of you are focused on.
Right.
I have a Syrian friend. I was in the States back in August, and I have a Syrian friend, and his son is like around 2021.
Okay.
And he was like planning to go, you know, to one day with his friends, and you know, the young man is I would say very well raised. He goes to Islamic school, and he you know, he's been raised with very high discipline. And then his dad was proud of him. He was telling me that, you know, he took his dad's permission, and they are preparing for the next day. They're taking a car, and they are going, you know, for spending the day by the river, actually. And then, like, during night, they are preparing sandwiches and stuff. And then his dad was impressed because he heard, like, three of them are talking, and, you know, they disagreed on something. So every one of them started to say, listen, in Sahih al-Bukhari it says this, and in Sahih Muslim it says this. Oh, I heard brother this and this said this. I mean, you're talking about the 3-4 young Muslims who were born and raised in the States. But, you know, they have the again, the right race and the strong Muslim bond, and they encourage each other to stay out of trouble and out of committing sins.
That's great. And you witnessed this. You were there and you saw these young Muslims.
Matter of fact, I know the guy, but I know his dad. So his dad was like, you know, proudly telling me that, you know, his son is on the right track.
Well, that's very important. I mean, essentially what we're saying here is that the Islamic concept of brotherhood, perhaps different non-Muslim groups have a different understanding of brotherhood.
Right.
But in the Islamic view, it's very specific. Essentially, it's about implementing Allah's will on earth through the relationships that we have with fellow believers.
Right.
Ultimately, would you say that's what it comes down to?
It starts in the masjid. It always, brotherhood always, this is what I've noticed personally. I've always used to ask myself, because I was raised amongst, you know, Europeans, people from America, people from many different countries and, you know, around the corners of the world. And the one thing that I noticed, that the people that I was mostly comfortable with were those whom I met at the masjid. And there was no masjid inside the place that I was living in. And I had to really go, like, my friend used to count, it used to be like 3,000 steps.
Wow.
You know, and an additional 1,500, he was very, you know, like, as we say in Egypt, fadi. He was counting each and every step while going. I'm like, you're very annoying. I'm never taking you again with me to prayer. And what I've noticed is that it always starts when you are commencing 5 times a day prayer in the masjid. You start noticing people who are really pious to Allah, who are really very committed when it comes to religion.
Right.
And you start sharing that same love of knowledge. And you find this commonality between you.
Right.
That you start saying that, oh, this guy loves Seerah al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the biography. And this person is in love with tafsir, the interpretation of the Quran. So you start to diverse, you know, in common discussions, and you start implementing, you know, solutions from Allah, the Almighty, in your common daily problems, whatever you find. The thing that I really was surprised from when it came to brotherhood is that a person who is your brother in Islam is someone who will be able to die for you. But your friend, this is someone who will be ready to die for you. Because in Islam, to protect the Muslim nation, and in other words, a Muslim man or woman or a child, you will be attaining paradise in the end. If Allah accepts your action, you will be in the path of attaining paradise. Again, when you are in a battle, in the days of the Prophet ﷺ, why would they go and fight, you know, disbelievers in the first place? They didn't want their money. They didn't want anything at all. They just wanted to preserve the safety and well-being of the Muslims. They just wanted to be left alone. They wanted to call people onto the truth, and that's it. Who were these people next to them in their houses? Were they only their neighbors? No, they were their brothers who used to prostrate together all before Allah the Almighty, whom they used to wear the same kind of clothes when going to Hajj or Umrah for the minor pilgrimage. They are those who will always be on your side in the path of Allah. That is the brotherhood that you really need to seek in this world. Seek someone whom after your death will remember you in their prayers. Because if a person dies, remember brothers, if a person dies, his actions will cease. Nothing will help him unless there is a continuous form of charity or someone is praying for him.
Yes.
And any knowledge that is actually benefiting the nation around him. Being inherited
and passed through. Right.
Of course.
Yes.
So this is one thing. Be around those who really love you in the sight of Allah. Because if you're around those who really don't care about you, unless for materialistic needs or worldly needs, we call them in Egypt here, you know, friends of benefits. Friends for benefits. And we all know this common term.
Yeah, sure.
So if this is the kind of friend that you want, then you're only showing who you really are. And you know yourself when you're looking in the mirror. But being a Muslim, someone who just wants to please Allah, he doesn't want any of the world's you know, riches, unless he wants to do it for survival purposes or just to live whatever halal thing Allah has allowed. Just be with those who love Allah. It's a very common factor.
Associating yourself with the right crowd is very important, Brother Mustafa.
Brothers, we're ready to take a look at a report. Inshallah, we'll come back to continue our discussion.
To start with, he says, يُعْرَفُ الْمَرْءُ بِخَلِيلِهِ فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلْ. A person is known by the friends that he or she has, and therefore it is very important for every one of you to select their friends, his or her friends, very carefully, and to make sure that they have not befriended those who will have a negative impact on them. These teachings of the blessed Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, are priceless. Because if he says a person is known by the type of friends he or she keeps, what we need to realize is that is exactly the way it will be. For example, and I'm going to give you just an example off the cuff, if a person's friends are all on drugs, there is a 99% chance that that particular person is also on drugs, even though they might hide it very well to their family members and others. And what is it in common between them if they were not on drugs? However, sometimes, and this is 1% of the time, where a person has 30 friends and all of them are on drugs and they are claiming that they are not on drugs, there is a 1% chance that they may be telling the truth. And perhaps they may be working on those friends of theirs. However, there is a greater chance of them deviating. And for this reason, you know, there is an English saying, birds of a feather flock together. It is important for us to know we interact with, we mix with people who are like-minded, people who think in a similar manner, people who understand a specific type of understanding. When they discuss, they have a certain level of discussion. So those we consider our friends. That is point number one, which means it's important to mix with like-minded people, those who will not mess our habits, those whom we will be able to develop with and through, rather than losing and becoming negative in the process. Sometimes people ask us a question, and that question is answered also in the religion, that if I were to be in good company, that which is good for me, those people who are good for me, I might be bad for them. So how do I know who is in good company and who is in bad company? Well, the religion has an answer for that, and it teaches us that if you have a good impact on someone, it means they are in good company, they have good friends. And if you are having a bad impact on them, then they are in bad company, and vice versa, which means if they are having a bad impact on you, then you have bad friends. And if they're having a good impact on you, even though you might not be that grand a person, then they are definitely good company for you. So that solves that matter. Now let's move further to the sharing of secrets between friends and what type of information we should be giving them. There is a hadith or a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, that is found in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, where he says, أحبب حبيبك هونا ما عسى أن يكون بغيضك يوما ما. When you love someone, you love them in moderation, because one day they may become your enemy or they may dislike you. This is a very powerful teaching. The reason is, when we love someone, when we are close to someone, when we have friends, we sometimes share some secrets with them. We give them a little bit of information that we would not like others to know. In that particular instance, we can become enslaved by that particular piece of information that they are holding, and then they can either blackmail us or they will hold it to the degree that they can make us do whatever they want, threatening to release that information. For this reason, it is important for us to know what type of information we give people and how much we give them. And this is why there are certain things you do not share with anyone at all, especially when a person has committed a sin. The religion teaches us that we should never be proud of sharing a sin with others. The Quran says in Surah An-Nur, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُحِبُّونَ أَن تَشِيعَ الْفَاحِشَةُ فِي الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. Those who like to spread tales of sin between the believing or among the believing people, for them will be a severe punishment in this world and the next. Which means we should not spread tales of immorality between the believers. If someone has committed a sin, it's their secret between them and their Maker. They should repent for it as soon as possible and believe that they are now forgiven, because forgiveness is something that Islam is based upon, and the Almighty is most merciful, most forgiving. So when a person begins to share the way they have sinned, what they have done, the sins they have committed with others, they become enslaved by those people. Tomorrow, when we'd like to break off the relation for legitimate reasons, they will always be holding some information about us that we would be very embarrassed about, and sometimes we might not be able to break off a relation, whereas we have legitimate reasons to do so, solely because they are holding some information that we have given them that is not very, very good about us. And we ask the Almighty to protect us all from this type of behavior.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Huda tonight. We're discussing friendship and brotherhood, looking at the differences, the similarities between the two. Our guests this evening, Brothers Mustafa and Wael. Thank you for continuing to be with us. At the end of that report by Mufti Mink, I had brought up the fact that, you know, I was raised in the church. I've been a Muslim now for 4 years.
MashaAllah.
And, you know, I was pretty deep in the church. I read the Bible cover to cover and studied it pretty extensively. And in the Torah, the Jewish Bible, it refers to Ibrahim, peace be upon him, Prophet Abraham, as the friend of God.
Okay.
There are lots of differences between the Islamic history of the prophets and the Jewish history of the same prophets.
Right.
very great differences. All of the prophets in the Torah, the Jewish Bible, are presented in
heinous ways.
In ways that, I mean, they're adulterers,
Yes.
they're drunkards,
Yes.
they're doing all kinds of terrible things.
Which is a lie, of course. There is no
Right.
proof.
All right. So can you address this subject? Our subject, as we said, is about friendship and brotherhood. Is the Islamic view of a prophet or a human being in general being a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Well, we have a term saying wali, like in a hadith, man aada li waliyan faqad adantuhu bil harb. What does it mean? That Allah is saying through the Prophet ﷺ, not in the Quran, but he's saying it in a holy hadith, hadith Qudsi. He's saying that let those who are trying to be enemies or trying to harm a loyal servant of mine. Again, the word wali might be interpreted literally into something which is Islamically unapproved. Meaning, if I say wali into a literal translation, saying that my friend, Allah has no friends, Allah has no associates, Allah has no partners. We always say la sharika lah. What does it mean? That no association with Allah whatsoever. Because being a friend in the first place means that you're in the same level, someone that I am capable of reaching physically, someone that I am capable of emotionally feeling right now.
Interacting with.
You know, yeah, it kind of, you know, this mutual interaction right now. This is something which is not to be described with Allah. But in the Quran or in the prophetic hadith, Khalilur Rahman, who is it? Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, was stated in the Islamic sense as the beloved servant of Allah. And in a hadith as well, the Prophet ﷺ, you know, when he stated that a believer is on the religion, or a person is on the religion of his companion.
So if we make this association of referring to a human being, a prophet or not, as being a friend of Allah,
This is wrong.
does that mean that it's an act of shirk?
Well, look, first off, there are two kind of categories into this. We're talking linguistically. We're talking
Shirk, I'm sorry, open that word up for our listener who doesn't.
Shirk means association of partners with Allah when
Okay.
it comes to godlyhood, or
Okay.
when it comes to any kind of interaction, as Brother Well has explained. But let me as well say that there are two things into this. There are two directions. The first one is a linguistic approach. The other one is the Islamic approach. The linguistic approach of this is that we can normally say waliyullah in Arabic, someone whom Allah has placed in a special custodianship, under his protection.
But still a servant.
He's still a servant. He has not been exalted into the levels of angels or anyone. But he might be in the sight of God, you know, in a better place than angels or anything. It depends on his obedience. It depends on his honor. Like Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he is blessed with the most exalted station in paradise. Doesn't mean that, you know, the angels, they're not special or anything. They're special, but they're not better than the Prophet ﷺ. Again, when it comes to wali or Khalil in the correct Islamic translation, the beloved servant of God. But we cannot say the friend of God. This is a biblical approach. And again, when it comes to the Bible is accepting of the Trinity, and it's more accepting of shirk, you know, association of partners with God, saying that God is not one, he's three, or three into one, and you start playing mind games and cards. This is unacceptable. But I'm just saying the truth. That's again, to reach the Islamic sense of a linguistic approach, this is the main thing. Khalil, beloved servant of Allah. Wali, a servant in a special protection or under the custodianship of Allah, in a different manner.
Wael, did you want to take a swing at this?
Actually, you know, I was wondering while looking to him, and you know, like, what triggered you to revert to Islam? So it's the other way now.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yes.
Well, we don't have time for this. I've been actually on Huda TV as a guest, and I've given my story.
Okay.
I'll give you the link for it.
Okay.
But very quickly, to answer your question, I wasn't completely comfortable or satisfied, at peace. I didn't fully believe what I was being taught in the church.
Okay.
I was quiet for most of my life,
Right.
just quietly rebelling and questioning, doubting. But then I started to look deeper and found the answers that I was looking for. Well, now I understand. I got more and more evidence that it was just made up, that there was a work of man and not of God. Yeah, and so
And you picked Islam right away, or did you shop around?
it took a while. It took a
Okay.
while. We'll talk more about
All
this.
right, sure.
Yeah.
I just, you know, touching base on the subject, about the importance of brotherhood and, you know, the difference between friendship and brotherhood in Islam. I want to refer to the biography of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and with, you know, his migration from Mecca to Al-Medina. He left Mecca and the companions as well, and they left everything behind them. And then they went to Medina and, you know, to establish a new life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to learn the religion and spread the word of Islam. So the immigrants, the people of Quraysh, they were called Al-Muhajirin, and then Al-Ansar are the supporters, the people of Al-Medina. Looking at the first year of the Prophet ﷺ within Al-Medina, there was many things that the Prophet ﷺ established, among them, like for instance, the prayer call, Al-Adhan, and the famous story of the Sahabi who saw the dream, and then the Prophet ﷺ picked up Bilal because he had a very good voice, and he started to, you know, call the prayer calls 5 times a day and so on. But, you know, looking at the biography books of the Prophet ﷺ, most authors divide the first year with 3 major events. The first one is building up the mosque. And, you know, we know the story that the land, you know, somebody wanted to donate the land, and the Prophet ﷺ insisted to buy the land, and the mosque represented at this time the center of knowledge, gathering, prayer, learning Islam and reciting Quran and so on, Shura Council and everything. And then the second important thing was the constitution, the rights and the obligations of the fellow Muslim citizens, and the rights and obligations of their neighbors, the Jews. And then comes the third thing in the importance and the priority, which is al-mu'akha bayna al-muhajirin wal-ansar. The brotherhood between the people of Mecca who immigrated to Al-Medina and the people of Al-Medina. Actually, this, you know, when you visualize it, it's not easy. Like, we live the same scenario nowadays, for instance, in the Middle East. We here in Egypt, we have a lot of people coming from, for instance, Libya and Syria. What did we offer them? I don't think much. But looking at Al-Muhajirin and the Ansar, literally Al-Muhajirin left everything back in Mecca. Everything, their wealth, their property, in some cases their kids or their spouses. And now going to Al-Medina, they find the people over there, or Al-Ansar, very welcoming, and they are willing to split everything they have. I have an example here of Sa'd ibn Rabi'a, who was an Ansari, and he was talking to Abdurrahman ibn Auf, who came from Mecca. And then he told him, I am one of the wealthiest among the Ansar, the people of Medina, the supporters of the Prophet ﷺ, and I'm willing to share and split everything I have with you. My property, my wealth, my house, even my wife's. I have 2 wives. He's not like treating wives as an object. The whole thing is, this is all what he have in life, and he's willing generously to split everything he have.
To divorce and collaborate.
So he said, yeah, he said, you know, I'm willing to divorce one of my wives. Again, I'm trying to put emphasis on this. It's not like a wife, an object or anything. The main objective of Sa'd ibn Rabi'a to create a normal, similar environment for Abdurrahman ibn Auf, like the same he had back in Mecca. So you know, he feels comfortable somehow, and he can focus. First of all, he get compensated for what he left, and he can focus on learning the religion. And then, so you know, the reply of Abdurrahman ibn Auf was very meaningful. He told them, God bless you for all what you have. Just direct me for the market, so I can trade and do business and build up, you know, like a life.
They weren't looking for handouts.
No.
They wanted to work
Right.
and buy the land and work for.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
people nowadays, you know, I'm not referring to, you know, a certain group of Muslims. I'm talking in general. You know, a lot of people they wanna, they say, oh, okay, we have hard times and we have all the excuse to, like, you know, have things easily. You even there's like very good examples, especially around here in like the 6th of October city. You look at young Syrians, they are selling stuff, and if you are trying to give them money, just, you know, just to help them out, they refuse. They insist on selling you something,
That's,
which is actually very impressive.
yeah, yeah.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had embraced Al-Ansar and the supporters of Al-Medina in Surah Al-Hashr, chapter 59, verse number 9, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and they prefer, meaning Al-Ansar, they prefer the Muhajirin, the people who came from Mecca, above themselves, even though poverty was there a lot. It was very tough conditions, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala embraced Al-Ansar for being very generous, to the extent that they were willing to split everything they had with the Muhajirin.
Yeah, we started out actually talking about how we're now living in the countries that we live in now are relics of the colonial past.
Right.
It's not only the political boundaries, it's the economic activity as well. And so perhaps if we were living, if the countries were able to enjoy more of the natural wealth without it being exploited by outside influences, that then perhaps the Muslim countries could better care for their own people,
Right.
and those who have been displaced because of war and fighting. Unfortunately, it's not so much in the case of Egypt.
Right.
There are other Muslim countries hosting displaced Syrians. It's the United Nations, the World Food Program,
Right.
is how they're going to buy food for their families, and not the Egyptian government.
Right.
Um,
Actually, see, this brings to my mind, like last year I was attending class about the Sirah, and our professor, like, while she was like describing the first year of Hijrah, and, you know, in the middle of like explaining the events, she stops at the event of the Brotherhood and Sisterhood, al-Mu'akha bayna al-Muhajirin wal-Ansar. And all of a sudden, you know, she asks us, what did you, like, guys do for the displaced Muslims from Yemen, Syria, Iraq, all over, unfortunately, all over the region. Unfortunately, all of us as Muslims, especially in the Middle East area, I mean, we did very little. We didn't do much. And if we are talking today about the concept of brotherhood, and going through all the hadith, which I mentioned in the beginning, and the verses from the Quran, we're obligated to do more.
There's great suffering that's happened
Yes.
in the Muslim Ummah because we're not able to effect change on the ground. The way to relieve the suffering, for example, the Palestinians, for seven decades,
Yes.
they've been living under a brutal occupation. Why can't the Muslim countries bring that to an end?
Right, and imagine if you go to work and just your car breaks down. You're upset. You're not in a good mood for 2-3 days till you get your car fixed back. But I mean, imagine this for a displaced family with kids going to school every day, and all of a sudden they are displaced and, you know, have to live with high uncertainty.
We don't understand. We don't have any idea
Yeah.
what many of these brothers and sisters are going through right now.
Right.
And so it's amazing when you see you know, sisters in the so-called refugee camps
Right.
during Ramadan, committed to having a happy environment for her children, cooking all the same foods that they're accustomed to, and giving gifts as best they can. it's deeply moving.
Right.
I full-heartedly believe when it comes to the policy of Umar ibn Khattab as
May Allah
being
be
one of
pleased
the
with him.
prophetic students, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's one of the best students of Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's try to bring him as an example. If he was the ruler of the Islamic world today, I believe one of the very first decisions that he would have done, there would be no African Cup unless the entire necessities and priorities of the Islamic nations were met, at least.
Right.
That's the first decision.
Right.
Because again, we had this talk while we were coming into the studio, and I've seen the excitement on people's faces and brothers' faces in the streets. All the families were together. I was really upset in the mosque in Isha prayer when I found a lot of people who actually came this time to the mosques to pray. Why? Because they had nothing to do as they were waiting for the match. And I'm not saying I judged them by intention, but I was able to see the excitement and all of the flags and everything.
We all see it. We all see it.
SubhanAllah, I was really disappointed at that time, brother, because in this, I said to myself that, all right, football as a sport is allowed. Sports are allowed in Islam. But the financial administration, the style of administrating financial things in the Islamic world today is really, prioritizing it, man. Please prioritize where you need to spend money on. When you have brothers and sisters who are literally being either sexually, physically, mentally, or relocated, forcefully exiled from their own homes, this is not the time where we have to celebrate. This is the time when we all have to unite and we all have to be under the flag of the Prophet ﷺ.
And even within these very games that we're talking about, there's a problem of racism.
Right.
The brothers, Muslim brothers from African nations,
irrelevant
are subjected to racism on the field by fans and fellow players.
Let me ask you one thing, brother. Haven't you noticed that Africa is facing a lot of problems when it comes to poverty and hunger? How many children died in Somalia? 30,000 children died of hunger.
Right.
And again, the African Cup, why are we making African Cups? We are suffering from hunger right now and overpricing of products and manufacturing, products. This is not the time when we need to spend. Allah will ask.
He will ask us. We all have. What did we do? We hoped. We prayed. Is that the end of it? Did we demand things of our governments, or did we?
We should not demand anything from anyone these days.
But we all have a role to play. I mean, it's not just us individuals, the three of us.
Of course.
Our governments also have a role to play to the suffering of other Muslim in other countries. The prevalence of racism among Arabs, among Muslims.
With all due respects to all governmental facilities, they are from us. The governments represent us. Unless
we hope so.
Yeah, unless we fear Allah, then they will be able to represent us.
It's a hard case to make sometimes. Brothers, we're out of time. Thank you very much for being with us, brothers Mustafa and Wahid.
You're welcome, brother.
Thank you, brother.
We've reached the end of our discussion. We hope you found something beneficial in tonight's program for the news segment as well as the social segment. May Allah accept our efforts, all of us, you, the viewer, and us here. Inshallah, we'll come back tomorrow to continue with more news and information and discussions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.